My name is Jonas Linderoth. I am a professor in education in Sweden who during ordinary times work in the field of game-based learning and ICT and learning. During the pandemic since mid-March, I have been working full-time in a crisis-initiated project called Skola Hemma, which means school at home, which has been funded by the Swedish National Agency for Education and driven by an organization called RISE, Research Institute of Sweden. So I've been borrowed out from my university to this organization. And what I've been doing there, so the goal of this project has been to try and help schools and help teachers to tackle the consequences of the pandemic. And my work has been to be sort of the research person in there. So I have been trying to put together research results about what we already know about online learning, break them down and adapt them to the current situation and present them in movies, interviews, texts, and so on, so that teachers can get some form of hands-on support. I should also mention that I think that there are a couple of things that is important when we talk about Sweden in this context. First of all, we are probably, from what I understand, the country has been doing the least closing downs in the world. Like we have only, from a K-12 perspective, it's only grade 10 to 12 that has been closed and higher education. So we haven't had a full shutdown of schools. We also have, and I think that's interesting in this, in relation to this, we also have one of the most decentralized school systems in the world, where we allow for-profit private education through a voucher system. So we have implemented that, and that has certainly been a challenge when it comes to helping teachers during these times, because in a crisis situation like this, it's really problematic to work with a so highly decentralized organization. It has meant, from my personal experience, that a lot of pressure when it comes to responsibilities of handling the problem has been pushed down in the system to the teacher, where, if I am to be honest, organizations have tended to have a we wash our hands approach to different issues. And what I've been trying to do in this is to have a very pragmatic perspective, very much trying to help the teachers with whatever I can do and as much as I can. So to answer the first question, the biggest sort of change in how education has been conducted, at least in Sweden, is of course the actual sort of the distance and the homeschooling of every single child. And what's striking there is that it's a distance in space, but not in time. So in ordinary sort of distance education and online learning, we use a lot of asynchronous moments. We record videos. In Sweden, there has been a lot of video conferencing. A lot of video conferencing. There has been situations where the pupils have mandatory attendance being in front of Zoom, actually. So it's almost like a digital panopticon that has been created in a sense. So I don't know why, but I think it's sort of, there is a system pressure where the system hasn't really allowed the flexibility that it should for the teachers. And that has meant that they have tried to mimic classroom education in this completely new situation. So they don't utilize the affordances of technology in the way that we do in higher education, because we have more flexible rule systems. So I think that is one of the biggest change. A big surprise, though, is that there weren't as many technological problems as we thought there would be. The infrastructure seems to have been in place, at least in Sweden, and that has sort of worked fairly well. So what have I learned then during this period? Well, or what have we learned? I think that as I mentioned, having a decentralized school system during times of crisis is really not a good idea. What's striking is that there are so many ways that you can imagine how this could have gone so much better if you have had more governmental control over schools in Sweden. The other thing is that we have a lot of problem already due to this decentralized school system with equality. And when you move into homeschooling, there is a lot, of course, this becomes amplified even more because the students are sitting at home and only have sort of the home environment is crucial in relation to what they have the opportunity to learn. So that is one thing that I think that we as a nation need to reflect upon and think about what it means for the crisis preparedness in the future, that we have this system. I think that some experience we have made that could contribute to enhance teaching and schooling is, there are a couple of things, but one is of course the importance of having rigid systems and so on, and not sort of constantly moving into this blame the teachers discourse. For instance, a lot of teachers have had a really hard problem in grading since they canceled some of the national tests that are very important for a very important tool for them to make this assessment. And to be fair, both from my colleagues in the academia and from different national agencies, the tone has been a bit neglected to see that this is a real life problem for the teachers. This is actually something that they have a practical problem, that this assessment is cancelled, and it is constantly being addressed with that they need to change their pedagogy. And sometimes, at least in my interpretation, that is a bit ignorant and lacks understanding of the real world problems that teachers actually have. And in regard to that, as a final thing, I think that one thing I've learned is that there is only so far you can go with educational research in relation to practical issues. In Sweden, there is a strong discourse for evidence-based education. But when you, as I have been trying to do for months now, when you try to look at research and adapt it to a hands-on situation, a lot of educational research, even if it's empirically sound, even if you have randomized control group, it moves on such a general level that when you try to put it into practice, it's a real struggle. For instance, there are research overviews and meta-studies saying that the most important thing is not the kind of delivery system you use during distance education. The most important thing is the quality of your education. Well, what does that mean to a lived teacher? When you have heard that, where do you go from there? What shall you do about it? How shall you, the next day when you enter the classroom, what shall you do with that knowledge? So I think that I have learned the importance of the lived and practical knowledge of the teachers, and to cherish that. And I will probably think a lot about that in the future, that relation in relation to the research that I produce. So